The silence at Dover Air Force Base was broken only by the rhythmic footsteps of the honor guard as 6 flag-draped caskets were carried off the transport plane. This is the somber image that the White House desperately tried to keep out of the headlines. But the reality of the midnight retaliation from Tehran has finally pierced the bubble of the Oval Office. President Donald Trump, who only 48 hours ago was declaring a total and historic victory over the Iranian regime, now faces what senior defense officials are privately calling a catastrophic setback. Operation Epic Fury, designed to be a quick and decisive decapitation strike, has instead ignited a regional firestorm that the United States is struggling to contain. The nightmare began in the dark hours of the morning when Iran launched its 23rd wave of ballistic missiles and suicide drones. This was not the uncoordinated flailing of a defeated enemy. It was a surgical strike that targeted the very eyes of the American defense shield. In a stunning breach of security, Iranian drones, reportedly aided by Russian satellite intelligence, successfully identified and destroyed for terminal high-altitude area defense radar installations. These systems, each costing nearly $1 billion, were supposed to be the invincible shield for American troops stationed in Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates. Instead, they are now blackened ruins. The Pentagon has been forced to admit that without these radars, our forward-deployed forces are effectively blind to incoming ballistic threats. This is the true cost of the midnight strikes that the administration tried to downplay. While the president continues to post on social media about an unlimited supply of munitions, his own military commanders are sounding the alarm. They are reporting that Iran has moved into a weapons-free mode, utilizing a decentralized mosaic defense strategy that allows local commanders to fire at will. Because the United States and Israel successfully eliminated the top tier of Iranian leadership, there is now no central authority left to negotiate a ceasefire. The White House has accidentally created a monster with 1,000 heads, each one capable of launching lethal strikes without warning. As the price of oil surges toward $100 per barrel and the stock markets in Tokyo and Seoul trigger emergency circuit breakers, the realization is setting in. This is no longer a quick mission. It is the beginning of a strategic quagmire that could define the next decade. The destruction of 4 terminal high-altitude area defense units represents the single most expensive day for the American taxpayer in modern military history. Each system, a crown jewel of aerospace engineering costing approximately $1 billion, was systematically dismantled by swarms of low-cost drones that our sensors simply failed to filter out. The White House has been forced to acknowledge that the internal assessment of this loss is a catastrophic blow to regional stability. But the technical failure is only half of the story. The true nightmare for the Trump administration is the source of the precision. American intelligence officials have confirmed reports that the Iranian Scorn military was being fed real-time coordinates of our radar arrays by Russian space-based surveillance assets. This marks a terrifying escalation where a nuclear superpower is now actively providing targeting data to help Iran kill American soldiers in the field, while President Trump was at Mar-a-Lago attending a Republican fundraiser. The Situation Room in Washington was in a state of controlled panic. General Don Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, has reportedly been described as a reluctant warrior, clashing with the president's more aggressive advisors over the lack of a coherent exit strategy. The military leadership is now grappling with the reality of a headless Iranian command structure. By successfully executing a decapitation strike that killed the supreme leader and 40 top generals, the United States has inadvertently severed the only hand that could have signed a peace treaty. Instead, we are facing thousands of mid-level commanders operating independently under a decentralized mosaic defense doctrine. These units are choosing targets designed to inflict maximum economic and psychological pain, from hitting a social security building in Kuwait to striking vital desalination plants in Bahrain. The retaliation is making the cost of supporting America unbearable for our regional allies. The president's public demand for unconditional surrender is being met not with white flags, but with a relentless drizzle strategy intended to bleed our interceptor stockpiles dry. We are now caught in a disastrous mathematical trap, firing $2 million missiles to intercept $20,000 drones. And the Pentagon admits the current rate of spending is unsustainable. The economic fallout of Operation Epic Fury is no longer a projection, but a crushing reality that is destabilizing global markets. In just the first 100 hours of combat, the war has cost the United States economy an estimated $37 billion. This astronomical figure is driven by the total paralysis of the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical energy choke point, which is now functionally closed as maritime traffic has plummeted by 90%. Iran has successfully turned the Persian Gulf into a logistical black hole. Major shipping companies have suspended all crossings because insurance rates have surged by as much as 50% in a single week, making commercial navigation practically impossible. This has triggered a massive global supply shock, with Brent crude oil surging past $90 a barrel and analysts warning it could easily reach $150 if the blockade remains in place. In the United States, consumers are feeling the impact immediately at the pump, experiencing the largest single-day rise in gasoline prices since early 2022. While the domestic economy reels, regional hubs like Dubai, which built their reputations on safety and prosperity, are now literal battle zones. Dubai International Airport, the busiest international hub on the planet, was forced to halt flights indefinitely after an Iranian drone crashed near a terminal building. Tourists and business expatriates watched in terror as falling debris ignited fires on the facade of the Burj Al Arab and the Fairmont Palm Hotel. Despite the chaos, the White House has offered no clear evacuation plan for the hundreds of thousands of Americans stranded in the region. Embassies have issued notices telling citizens to depart via commercial means, effectively leaving them to fend for themselves while the airports they are supposed to use are under constant bombardment. This perceived abandonment, combined with a cratering approval rating of only 27%, has left President Trump facing a profound political crisis. The man who campaigned on ending endless wars has now authorized the bombing of 7 countries, leading many to fear that America has lurched into its most dangerous conflict without any plan for the day after. The White House is now being forced to reconcile with a catastrophic setback in its intelligence assessments as the true aftermath of the midnight strikes becomes clear. For months, the administration claimed that previous operations had already decimated Iran's nuclear program, but internal reports now confirm those facilities are largely intact and producing material at an accelerated rate. This intelligence failure has been compounded by a humanitarian disaster that has turned the global community against Washington. The strike on an elementary school in the southern city of Minab has left more than 175 people dead, including many young girls. While President Trump publicly blamed the Iranian regime for the massacre, multiple investigations by international media and briefings to the United States Congress confirm that American munitions were responsible for the impact. Instead of triggering the revolution the White House expected, this tragedy has galvanized the Iranian people around their new leadership. The selection of Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader marks the beginning of an even more confrontational era. Like his father? The 56-year-old Mojtaba is a hardened extremist who is responsible for the brutal crackdown on internal protesters earlier this year. His first decree was to activate a formal strategic partnership with Russia, which is now providing high-fidelity intelligence to help Iran locate and destroy American assets across the Middle East. This has led to the successful targeting of the Central Intelligence Agency building in Riyadh and the United States consulate in Dubai. Even more troubling are reports that the president may be using this escalating war as a massive distraction from domestic scandals, specifically the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Analysts point to a direct correlation between the legal heat in Washington and the intensity of the bombing campaign in Tehran. As the conflict widens, the Pentagon is warning that the shock and awe campaign has failed to degrade Iran's mobile missile launchers. which remain hidden in the mountains, ready to fire more salvos at American bases that are already running low on defensive munitions. The facade of unlimited American munitions is beginning to crumble under the weight of reality. While President Trump continues to tell the public that the United States possesses a virtually unlimited supply of weapons, he has been forced to call an emergency meeting with executives from the nation's largest defense contractors, including Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. The objective of this urgent gathering is to quadruple the production of exquisite-class weaponry. As the Pentagon works feverishly to replenish supplies burned through in the opening week of combat, the staggering cost of the first 100 hours alone reached approximately $3.7 billion, an average of nearly $900 million every single day. This expenditure is driven by a disastrous mathematical asymmetry where the United States is forced to fire million-dollar Patriot interceptors to stop $20,000 Iranian drones. Iran has deliberately adopted what analysts call a drizzle strategy, launching projectiles at a slow but steady pace to drain the defensive stockpiles of the United States and Israel. This military strain is mirrored by a deepening diplomatic isolation that the White House did not anticipate. Relations with the United Kingdom have reached a historic low as President Trump openly criticized Prime Minister Keir Starmer for initially refusing to allow American bombers to use British soil for strikes. The president went as far as to mock the late arrival of British aircraft carriers, stating that America does not need allies who join wars after they have already been won. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has formally condemned the invasion as unlawful and a violation of international law. The coalition that Washington claimed was rock solid is instead fracturing, with regional partners like the United Arab Emirates struggling to understand Israel's conduct and demanding that senior officials stop speaking on their behalf. Amidst this global backlash, the first confirmed American fatalities have returned to Dover Air Force Base. 6 soldiers, including a 20-year-old reserve soldier from Iowa, were killed when an Iranian drone struck a makeshift operations center in Kuwait. Reports now confirm that these troops had reached out to the chain of command, warning that their location was indefensible and lacked anti-drone systems, yet their pleas were ignored. Now, as the Pentagon plans for a conflict that could last through September, the president is reportedly considering the very thing he vowed to avoid: sending boots on the ground to secure unsecured uranium facilities deep inside Iranian territory. The deployment of the third aircraft carrier, the USS George Henry Walker Bush, signals that the White House is preparing for a conflict on a scale not seen in over 20 years. While this massive concentration of naval power projects dominance, it also highlights a desperate need for fresh munitions and crew relief as existing stockpiles are depleted at an alarming rate. Beneath the surface of the Persian Gulf, the military is reportedly deploying secret underwater sea leech drones from Lockheed Martin to secure vital shipping lanes. But even this high-tech intervention cannot hide the fact that the United States is trapped in a devastating mathematical war of attrition. In a final chilling interview, the Iranian national security leader, Khalil Larijani, warned that the assassination of the supreme leader has removed every remaining red line. He stated that Iran will not rest until they have retaliated in kind, effectively placing a direct target on President Trump himself for what he called a crime against humanity. The strategic landscape has shifted from a limited surgical strike to a global struggle for energy and survival. With the Strait of Hormuz remaining a graveyard for international trade and shipping traffic down by 90%, the global economy is staring into a deep abyss. American intelligence now warns that the new regime under Mojtaba Khamenei will be infinitely more aggressive and less interested in diplomacy than his predecessor, potentially forcing a long-term ground occupation that the American public has no appetite for. As the administration continues to ignore the lack of a coherent exit strategy, the rest of the world observes a superpower paralyzed by its own tactical success. The midnight strikes, once hailed as a masterstroke, may instead be remembered as the moment the old regional order finally shattered beyond repair. Despite the president's insistence that this war is merely a minor glitch or a temporary detour, the 6 flag-draped coffins returning from Kuwait tell a much darker and more permanent story.